Well, good morning, my friend. Today, May the 28th, the beginning of Memorial Day weekend. And I want you to take some time. I think a lot of times we forget what Memorial Day is all about. Just if you look at the history of Memorial Day, the purpose of it is to honor those who died to give us our freedoms. I think in America today, we have certainly lost the purpose of why these people gave their lives. Well, no matter what war it is, whether it's and I can start going through the wars. I don't want to do that because there's so many. And every life that is lost is a parent, a family member, a brother, a sister who lost a loved one, a child. And can I ask you this weekend, on this Memorial Day weekend, when our freedoms are under attack by politicians who have forgotten that they even hold an office because somebody died to give them freedoms, who fought against communism, fascism, and gave us the freedoms that we have to keep us from away from the dictators that would like to rule our lives. People died. I think of even in the American Revolution, died so we could have religious freedom, so we didn't have to worship under the rule of a king. I think of governors. I think the Governor Newsom in California, who's a evil man, and I say that with all intent and purposes, who has closed down churches. I think of other governors who have done their part to try to stop the church and stop God. One day they will stand before that God who they've tried to stop, who they think is foolish. One day they'll wish they would not have tried to shut him down. And yet we have people who died for our freedoms so we could have these freedoms in America. The Memorial Day weekend ought to move every believer not to be out on Sunday in parks, but we ought to be in our church and celebrating the fact that people died to give us the freedom to go to church. I hope that you would do that this weekend. As I just wanted to talk about this just briefly before I get into the devotion I want to talk to you about. But thank God for every soldier who's given their life. I have been to some of the memorials. I think I've been out every year. I go to San Francisco and I go to their memorial there, the War Cemetery there, and I always remember the people who died to give me my freedoms. I've been to World War II cemetery in the Philippines. I've been to the Memorial Cemetery in Washington, D.C. And every time I see those tombstones of people who died for my freedom, I thank God for them. And I hope that you would do so as well. I want to read to you this morning, though, from Isaiah chapter 37 and verse 1. The scripture says, "And it came to pass when Hezekiah heard it, that he rent his clothes and covered himself with sackcloth and went into the house of the Lord." Now, sadly, many people's response to bad news and tragedy is a response that only makes the situation worse. You may not be able to control the bad news and tragedy in your life, but you can control how you respond to it. You'd better learn to respond to the bad news and tragedy in the right way so that you don't make your situation worse. Hezekiah had bad news and a potential tragedy happened in his reign that he responded in the wrong manner. He could have, had he responded in the wrong manner, he could have destroyed his kingdom, my friend, and those who were living in it, and likely his own life. But he responded in the right way. When the king of Assyria tried to invade his land, he had told them that this king said, "You got to surrender or else we're going to destroy you." Everything that the king of Assyria mentioned in his threats, listen to this, were true. How that nobody had ever stopped him before. But one thing that the king of Assyria had never dealt with before was the God of Hezekiah. Hezekiah could have easily responded in a wrong manner to this bad news and the potential tragedy that led him to win this war. How Hezekiah responded to the bad news is how you should respond to bad news and tragedy in your life if you want to come out on the good side of the situation. Now, let me just point out several things of how he responded. First, keep going to church. The first place that Hezekiah went to when bad news came was he went to the house of the Lord. You see, the worst thing you can do when bad news and tragedy hit your life is to stay away from church. Why is it that you think staying away from church is going to help your situation, my friend? The only one who's going to help your situation get better is the Lord. And you're not going to get his help by disobeying the command to assemble in church. Stop staying home. Well, you say, I got to fix my problems. You fix your problems in church, my friend. Go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. You be in church. You don't fix situations by staying home. Second, run to the Lord. Hezekiah ran to the Lord for help and not his peers. His peers could do nothing for his situation other than commiserate with him over his situation, which would not have changed one thing. Can I tell you, running to help with a situation that needs God only makes your situation worse. Running to people to get sympathy does not change your situation. The first person you should always run to when you get bad news is God. Third, pray. Hezekiah didn't waste time trying to work things out for himself, but he immediately went to the Lord, laid out a situation to the Lord. You see, prayer is a good habit to establish when you're hit with bad news. And when you're hit with the news, whether it's good or bad, just run to the Lord. You get good news, run to God. You get bad news, run to God. Making prayer your first response to all types of news will help you treat the news in a godly fashion. Because you can't change the bad news or tragedy, you ought to go to the Lord in prayer. Ask for his help to turn the bad news and tragedy into good news and triumph. Fourth, trust the Lord, my friend. Hezekiah trusted the Lord by obeying the Lord's advice. Listen to this from the preacher, and it turned out for good. Now, you're going to find that trust in the Lord when bad news and tragedy comes will be the very help emotionally that you need to weather the storm. Now, you trust the Lord by continuing to do what you're supposed to do, but don't stop serving the Lord in tragedy. Keep serving the Lord in times of tragedy and bad news. God will likely use your continued service in bad times and tragedy to turn it into good news and triumph. Now, you have to understand, you trust the Lord. Where did he get us from? From the preacher. To avoid the preacher in your bad news and tragedy is your mistake. Trying to work it through yourself. God gave you a pastor to help you. He's not going to hurt you. Listen to me. Nothing wrong with going to your parents. Nothing wrong with going to some good, godly people. But God gave you a pastor for a reason. That pastor God often speaks through the pastor to help you. When you're going through rough times, you'd better learn. Run to the preacher. Run to God. Trust God. I know the Pharisees out there think, well, I'm going to trust God. Yeah, God's giving you a preacher, Pharisee. And let me tell you something. You can run from your preacher. Many times you have. And because your decision maker is broken, you make wrong decisions because you're basing what God tells you to do on your feelings. You better trust God. Let your preacher help you to see God's light in your life. And I promise you, you respond right to the bad news and tragedy. It can turn out right. My friend, I hope this is a help to you. Can I remind you to this weekend, be in church, tell someone about the Lord, bring them to church. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Take some time to stop. Thank God for the freedoms we have in America. Remember, my friend, be good to everybody. Everybody's having a tough time. Have a great day, my friend.